just because the grain alcohol is really strong and can be irritant to the digestive tract. Also, a lot of people can't have alcohol, so it's kind of limiting who you can share it with. Also, vinegar itself, apple cider vinegar, has so many health benefits of its own. So, you know, it's weaker than the alcohol, but it's better tolerated by the body, and you know, the pH is more similar to that of the digestive system itself, the stomach. So it's less heating, and the vinegars that are made with a bacterial mother. So when you buy your apple cider vinegar, look for one that says made with the mother or a mother. That's just a term to describe a kind of bacterial gloop, which is going to do all the work of turning, you know, an alcohol through secondary fermentation into a vinegar. So vinegars made with that kind of process have many health benefits. They are probiotic, antioxidant. They improve digestive and absorptive function of the digestive tract, and they possibly also have been shown to improve immunity on the whole and regulate blood sugar. So the kind of vinegars that I wouldn't use for this are things like malt vinegar or anything that's sort of not raw. We want it to be raw, and we want it to be made using this natural process with a mother. So, so is it possible to overuse bitters? This is the next question I have here. Yes, definitely. So, in the Ayurvedic system, there's also a kind of proportionality involved in the taste. You need, you know, more of the sweet taste than you do of the bitter taste. The bitter taste is a lot more potent, so you only need a small amount. If you think about a meal, you could have, you know, a sort of handful of something like rice, which has a sweet taste, and then you'd have some, you know, vegetables on there, or maybe like a dal or a curry, and all you'd need would be like a sprinkling of something bitter on top. You don't need to have like a, you know, the majority of the meal tasting like that, because it's one of the more potent flavors. So, you know, that sort of balance is important, and you know, if you do have the bitter taste because it's connected to the elements that it's connected to, if you have too much of it, then you're inviting that sort of excessive like air and space quality into the body, into the mind, which can also lead to imbalance, especially in a Vata individual, Vata predominant individual who already has a constitutional alignment with those elements and is more prone to kind of airiness, spaciousness, but also like maybe, you know, gas and things like that. So if you are really quite Vata, then, you know, just take it easy on the bitters and have a small amount. My kind of thinking around that is just to introduce a small amount and then watch yourself and monitor your reaction, and to see exactly how much before or after meals, what suits your body. So yeah, so we will only ever need a small amount of bitters. A small amount goes a long way, and there's also a kind of ideal order of consumption, which pretty much is from sweet downwards, and the bitter comes towards the end of a meal or at the end process of digestion, which makes quite a lot of sense when we think about, you know, in Europe, the tradition of having a strong espresso of coffee after a meal, which is very bitter, or indeed in Italy they have the tradition of taking a small amount of amaro, which is amaro literally means bitter in Italian, but it's an alcoholic beverage made by steeping wormwood, which is a bitter plant, in alcohol. So they would have that after a meal, which aligns itself perfectly with Ayurvedic thinking. Right, so we've spoken about the benefits of bitters and the kind of Ayurvedic as well as the Western herbal perspective. So I'm sure that by now you'll be convinced that you want bitters in your life. So how can we do that? There's multiple different ways. One of the easiest ways of including more bitters in your diet is through bitter foods. So the cabbage family, or cruciferae, like cabbage, sprouts, broccoli, all those kind of cabbagey flavors do have a bitter component. That's why some people really don't like them. But those are good. Also, algae, seaweeds sometimes have a bitter component. Spirulina, for example. Then there's bitter gourd, bitter melon, dandelion leaf, dandelion root, endive, which is also called chicory. You can have fresh chicory, which is like a salad leaf. Radicchio, which is like a red, strong red, kind of very like almost quite cabbagey salad leaf, which is very bitter. And then there's more herbal stuff like aloe vera gel, yellow dock, neem. If you want to go down the Ayurvedic herbs route, and things like coffee as well is bitter. Then in terms of like bitter additions to things like drinks, you can get Angostura bitters, which does contain alcohol, but that's a brand that's made with Angostura bark, and you could just add that to some fizzy water or something and have it instead of a cocktail. If you don't drink alcohol, you won't be able to do that because it does contain alcohol. But you can do the same thing with your homemade vinegar bitters that we're going to make now. Also, tonic water does have a bitter component. It's made with quinine, and if you find one that doesn't have too much of a sweetness going on at the same time, then you will reap the benefits of the bitter flavour from even just a glass of tonic water. And then, of course, there's the whole kind of herbal compendium of bitter herbs. There's so many. I've only listed a few, and I'm just going to read out this list, but I'm reading it out from mild to strong bitters. So some herbs have like just a little bit of a bitter background flavour, and then there's other herbs where as soon as you taste it, you're like, oh my god, that's so bitter. So those will be at the end of this list. So I've got up here dandelion, yarrow, chamomile, marigold or calendula, cinnamon, milk thistle, aloe vera, artichoke leaf, cramp bark, these are getting strong now, gentian, golden seal, which be careful because it is endangered, so check your sources, and if it's in the wild, maybe don't harvest it without checking local guidelines before you do that. And then the last two, rhubarb root and wormwood, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is the Artemisia family. Another thing that I wanted to mention here is that when you're looking for bitter herbs to include in your diet, a lot of wild plants have a bitter taste principle in them because the plants use that to ward off pests and little animals that might want to eat them. So they produce these bitter phytochemicals, and that's what kind of dissuades insects and pests from nibbling their leaves. And so, they might vary from area to area, but if you're supplementing your regular diet with, wild or foraged foods, then you will be getting a little bit more of that bitter taste in your diet. Also, non-herbal foods that have bitterness to them, like orange peels, things like that, those are all things that you can include in your bitters when you're making your own. Another thing is, when you're making your own cider vinegar bitters, feel free to include herbs that aren't bitter. So, for example, if you wanted to take a herb like lavender or something because of its nervine effect, because of the relaxing effect that it has, or oat straw or something like that, and this can really go for any property or any herbal action, just include it in the bitters. The vinegar will extract those components, along with taking it as a tea or whatever, but don't feel like the only herbs that you can put inside the vinegar are bitter herbs. It can pretty much be anything you want. And you could, you can kind of play with it a little bit and theme the bitters. So, bitters are mostly known for the digestive tonic effect that they have on our bodies, but you can also add a kind of, a component about women's health. So I'm making a bitters about, supporting women, relieving menstrual cramps, for example. But also, or you could do a solely digestive bitters and include other stuff like ginger and things like that. Or you could do a healthy skin bitters and include a herb like burdock, which really supports the liver. It's not really bitter though. So, just play around with it and, just I would encourage you to be creative. And, one of the best things about bitters, and I think this is why I really got into making them, is that there aren't really any rules. So you can kind of, make it your own and just experiment a little bit. So I've made a note here. If you really hate the bitter taste, but you still want to get some of these properties that I've mentioned, what you can do is you can add some raw honey to your apple cider vinegar bitters once you've strained off all the other herbs. So after you've left it to sit for however long you leave it, then strain off the spent herbs, so that means the herbs or whatever plant material is in there which has released its goodness into the vinegar, and mix in some raw honey. I've been eating some gorse. It's a bit stuck in my throat. Not so much honey that you completely replace that bitter with the sweet taste, because that's sort of, honey has quite an interesting flavour profile itself, but you do want to have a bit of bitterness, but if the honey is going to help you to stomach it, then go for that. I think that's what's called an oxymel. I'm not really sure. Right, so here we go. I'm going to kind of take you through the process of making some bitters, and I've got some equipment out here in the garden with me. As I said, there's no real rules, so what you're going to need is just a jar, an empty clean jar, which can be sealed. It's quite nice if you can see through it, because then you can sort of watch the liquid change colour and turn it over and make sure everything's getting some good vinegar airtime. So I've kind of just gone through my cupboards and found some bitter herbs that I already had, and I'm going to just layer them up in there. The only kind of thing that I would say is that you can break up whatever plant matter you have as fine as possible, because when you're increasing the surface area, for example, of these milk thistle seeds, are quite tough actually, and if you just put them in the vinegar, they'll probably just swell up and not really give any of their insides up. So I've just been kind of crushing them a little bit, and then I will transfer those into the jar. So some milk thistle seeds, Silybum marianum. And I've also got some dandelion. This is apparently dandelion root, but it looks more like leaf to me. But anyway, hopefully it is dandelion. I'll put some of that in. But the quantities are really it's up to you. Another thing that I like to do is, as I mentioned earlier, there's different herbs, some of them are really strong bitters. Some of them are like dandelion root and leaf it's quite, you can taste its bitterness, but it's not overwhelming. So you can actually put quite a lot of this in. Whereas the strong herbs, I'm going to add some gentian, which is really strong. I wouldn't put so much of that in. So I've got these. These are some more dandelion leaves from Greece, which I've had for a while. But they actually look better quality than those last ones. You can still see the kind of leaf shape in there. So I'm just going to break those up again to increase the surface area, but you don't need to be too precise with this all. The last thing I'm going to add is gentian. So this is a really strong bark, or root. I don't know, it's woody.